Dorothy Kweyu to join us. I will also invite Dr. Peter Kamunyo, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Hospital Insurance Fund, and Mr. Edward Odek of the Kenya Commercial Bank, who has extensive experience both at banking locally but also banking internationally. But no, we are not interested in the international so much today. We are discussing very personal issues. Please come up and join us. As they do, for those who are not here in the morning as we are negotiating lunch, I hope you enjoyed your lunch, by the way. Eric Shimoli, there was ugali. If you did not take advantage of it, I am sorry. I am sorry. You cannot. That cannot be on anybody other than. The lawyers say, it's your fault. Volenti non fit injuria. I went to school, Professor. I went to school. It was Saturday, though. My task here is very easy and very pleasant. We had initially attempted to do this conversation just before lunch hour to figure out how to equip editors on savings and investment skills to survive after the newsroom. We all know the kind of environment we are living in. It's a very precarious employment situation. And as I was telling you, since my brain cells started dying, my metaphors and my stories are not, I keep on repeating the same stories I've told you before. So I was telling you about that story about getting off a plane. You can disembark using the stairs, which is now, where you elect to leave. You can also be thrown out from the luggage hall. You just drop, no parachute, no nothing, or you can do it military style, which is a parachute to help you. So there are some people who live, dignified retirement, and you know that by next year, Aduda and I worked for a boss who used to call people sometime, I think at the end of November, and say, now Aduda, this is your December check, there will be no other check in January. And I think he used to enjoy it. So how do you deal with those kinds of situations? And there are others, it comes like that thing that they used to have in the World Cup called sudden death. You wake up one day and things have happened, but life must go on. So that's a conversation that we want to have today. What do you do when this happens suddenly? How do you get back on your feet? How do you recover? How do you begin to? I don't want to give you very many stories. So my role here is very easy. I will attempt to moderate, and I will moderate in just the way of keeping time. So I will ask Dorothy to come and speak for about 10 minutes about her experience. I don't want to tell you her story. She's the best. She's her own best spokesperson. But the story of how she left the newsroom dramatically was actually taught in journalism school at some point. Anyhow, how was it like? How did you adjust? How did you find it? What do we learn from it? 10 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to thank my little brother Kwamchesi or Kwam for ambushing me and asking me to speak impromptu, and I'll do just that. Because as he says, it's my life story, and that makes it easier than if I had to prepare a presentation. Now, I've been in and out 3 times. And I'll start at the bottom. When my little sister, who may not be in here, but is supposed to be here, Catherine Wanyama, called me the last time, he said, oh, she's here, that you are wanted. And I thought, did I write something bad in my last opinion? Because since 1987, when I first left the nation, I have fortunately been retained as a contributor. So even though I don't have a regular column, but the understanding is that I should produce at least 3 stories in a month. Sometimes I don't meet the quota because I'm maybe tired, you know. Or sometimes, for whatever reason, I don't meet the quota, but I'm supposed to at least give 3 stories. So when I was called, I thought, my God, what did I write? And then HR sat, Mutuma sat, and Kathy sat in the background, and they said, actually, we want you back. And I was like, what? You know? Because I was beyond, you know, we call, is there use by date in journalism? I don't think so. Because when I look at the Western format, you know, those developed countries, there's no use by date. So, but as per the nation structure, when I left, I was past the use by date by 4 years. So when I was called, I couldn't have imagined that they still think I'm relevant. So, and that was 4 years after the use by date. So I said, okay. But I told them what my thinking was. I said, look, I've been here in and out, and this the 3rd time, and I never want to come here a 4th time. That's what I said. So you better give me somebody to mentor so that when I go, there's somebody with those skills. And the HR said, you will find that person yourself. Since it was them to give me that somebody, I didn't find somebody, and I don't think I would have found somebody because everybody has their job description. The thing is, during the 4 years before I was recalled for the last time that has just lapsed, I was not sitting idle. I was busy. And one thing about the mainstream and about writing and editing, you know, but especially about writing, is that you are always there, you know. And if you had a stint like I did at the KBC, not as an employee of the government, but as a guest alongside Harmony Gambi, those good old days when there was the press conference with Seth Adagala, God rest his soul. Many people used to ask, are you still at KBC? Which I wasn't. So you have visibility either via the byline or via the program that you are presenting. And that in itself makes it easier for you to have a soft landing out there, because there'll always be people who think they can use your skills. Most of them are very decent and very good people, but some of them can be crooks. And I won't name some of them because you'll be shocked at some of the crooks. And I'm not here to scandalize anybody. If you come, maybe I could whisper in your ear, but again, I'm not into that. So, generally, it's not bad out there. I can say it without a fear of contradiction, because when I was recalled, I was doing my things, editing this and that, annual reports, you know, because editorial skills are woefully wanting out there. And if you are a good editor, your reputation follows you. So nobody should be scared of being out there. Of course, inside is easier. You know, the easy option of just sitting and waiting for the paycheck. I'll not be hypocritical about that. But the work that you do out there tends to take a little longer because so and so has not signed, or so and so also wanted to check your work, and therefore it will take a bit because he's out of the country and we really can't pay you before he comes and gives a yes. Never mind that now everything can be checked online, you know. We have that option. So the crooks are all over. Most of them don't even mean to be crooks. Maybe the account is a bit low and they need an excuse to delay your payment, your well-deserved payment. So the first point is that it's not doom and gloom out there, you know. There's life outside the newsroom. But now, I think my little brother Kwam wanted me to talk about my first exit. And I left it with a very clear mind, because the reason why I left was the most spurious, and it was really sexist, because my immediate boss had left and had been acting, and I had done splendidly well in my acting capacity, whereby I was given a letter as news editor, you know, acting news editor, and it's still on file, saying that while I was away, I did that, and therefore it is a commendation, and they didn't reduce my salary. They allowed me to retain my salary after that acting capacity. So the question of my being mediocre was not an issue. So when the time came now, when my immediate boss left, and it took a while to hire, one of the bosses, you know, hire an ME, came and whispered, you know what, I need to tell you that even though you qualify to be confirmed into news editor position, the MD thinks that as a housewife, you cannot respond to a fire in Mathari at midnight. And so think about it. I think I felt offended and tendered my resignation, and doubled in in civil society for the first time for about 2 years, or to be precise, 22 months, because I was, at that time, I had been very active in promoting proper infant and young child feeding through breastfeeding. And a breastfeeding lobby group took me on board on the strict understanding that they would allow me time to continue writing my column, which they did until my boss chose to migrate to Canada, and they said, now you will be the boss. And sincerely, I wasn't ready to abandon journalism. It has always been my love. Journalism has been my first love. So when it came to being CEO of the IBFAN Africa, that is International Baby Food Action Network Africa region, as CEO, not as deputy, because I was deputy regional coordinator, I again threw in the towel. And this time was my first time now to take charge of myself. And I had a brief stint at the African Center for Technology Studies that was led by now late Calestas Juma. And I was editing Innovation Magazine. I was its founder editor. I don't know if it's still there. And then when an opportunity came, because I got an editorial consultancy with UNICEF that gave me the first biggest check ever, which was 500K. That was a lot of money in 1992. Then it gave me the motivation to start Interlink Rural Information Service, which you can look at as a leap of faith, And Interlink Rural Information Service lived between 1992 and 2003. And its trouble started during the transition between the Moi regime and the Kibaki regime, because it was largely donor-driven, and most of them were saying, look, we are holding onto our money until we see who wins this election. And unfortunately, it was a bit too tight, and I thought that in as much as whatever comes, is shared, with the staff, but there is also that factor of the family. So I bit humble pie and told Wangedi Mwangi that, you know what, you never sacked me. So I've come back for my job, and whether it is writing or editing, you choose. So that is how I became Revice Editor, a position that I've been in and out since 2003 to the end of October. So I'm talking to you as a new outsider, I've been Revice Editor in a consulting capacity, let me put it that way, because at my age, I couldn't be made permanent and pensionable, because, I can drop dead any moment. So I've been in that capacity, but on the 31st of October, that ended. So I'm out there again, and it's exciting to be in control of your own time. I don't know how it feels, how it will pan out, but I believe I believe that it will continue until the good Lord sends his angels to sound the trumpet. That's all. There's life outside the newsroom. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorothy. You are always an inspiration. And because you rebelled early, many of us followed in your footsteps. We rebelled and we paid a much higher price than you. I take 3 lessons from what you have just told us. One is, how do you indicate to your networks that you are available? Because I think the first thing is that you need to indicate, you must have a language of indicating to people out there that, even with all these skills that I have, I'm not going to sink into embarrassment. This thing about not having a job anymore is not something, it's not your fault. So it's not something to be embarrassed about. People need to know so that, people might actually be looking for that skill. So let people know, at least the people you trust, that you are available. Of course, the downside of that is that I get this a lot, which is sometimes people just start bad-mouthing you and saying, if it's Andy is so busy, he cannot even pick up the phone. So you might actually have stories just doing the rounds. It's, Andy is a great, great editor, but he is so busy. At that time, you're just idle. You're watching the World Cup. So number one, be available. I think I also hear from what Dorothy is saying is, don't burn bridges. Yeah, maintain goodwill, don't burn bridges. Whatever decisions people make, circumstances change, situations change. You might actually find yourself in the same place. A story of my life. Number 3 is, I think, and I think this is where we are heading into with, I think I come to you, Edward, about navigating this flow of money. You're used to a paycheck coming, and sometimes you can even take credit at the kiosk on the basis of the check that's coming from the star. And then suddenly now, this has dried up. So how do you manage yourself? There have been instances when I have waited for a check for a year and a half. So and you can't stop living. You've got to still figure out. So I think Edward will come and help us to deal with that. Two other things I heard from Dorothy. One is be open to new possibilities. Be open to new possibilities. There are new frontiers that will open just because you know how to sub and or you know how to edit and write headlines, and that's the only thing that you will do. Your skills are probably useful in other areas. We found ourselves, I can confess, when I first left the nation, I edited the Bulletin of Animal Health and Husbandry. It's an OAU publication. And I learned a lot of things from it, and I was just not stuck with this thing of, how do you write intros? So I'm very knowledgeable. I'm very knowledgeable on how to challenge a bull with a virus and observe it for 14 days and record results. And the fifth thing that I had, I hope I'm not misrepresenting you. The fifth thing that I had is enterprise journalism. That journalism actually can be an enterprise. And IRIS, that's what it was called, Interlink Rural Information Service, is one of those really, really early precursors. So in whatever iterations, this business is not just about being employed and drawing a paycheck. I think they are useful things to hear. They are reassuring, but I know what people want to talk about is money. They want to talk about money. So this check arrives, and mercifully Wangethi is no longer the group managing editor. Oh, Adudana have revealed, because no, he's not going to tell you, this is your last check, so spend it carefully. When that final check shows up, how do you behave with it? What are you supposed to do? You've got mortgages, you've got loans, you've got debts, you've got a Kasako loan and something else. And I hope they don't repossess cars now. When the moment of separation arrives, sometimes you are told, please, they send the security guy to collect the key. Shimo is smiling. I think he knows that story very well. Anyhow, don't let me regale you with too many stories. I'm just warming the microphone. Edward, please come and talk to us about, how do you transition from having this regular income to this unstable environment, please.
Good afternoon. I see quite a number are resting their eyes. Maybe you can stand. You can stand and just say, wave to your neighbors. We don't say you are sleeping, you are just resting your eye briefly. Okay, I think we are okay. We are all alert, we can stretch. Thank you. Thank you. Kwam. I think I'll call you Kwam. So, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I think it is within the 10 minutes. First and foremost, on behalf of KCB, I'm delighted to join the Kenya Editors Guild for this 5th annual convention. I think I've seen Editors Guild grow over time. So the next thing is just to express my appreciation for the partnership that we've had, and to convey my greetings from our captain, the CEO, who could not be here with us. But the partnership is very mutual, very symbiotic, and I think it is there to grow. We really allowed KEG, part of the Fourth Estate, all the time to keep us on check, as is usually the norm, but also to educate everyone that interacts, especially in the financial space. So I think the topic is very wide, but I'll contextualize or as you do your business on a daily basis, you want to interact with money, and everybody is looking for that money. But the fundamental question, because it is about us, it is not about our employers, it is not about the newsrooms or probably where we space, whether you play in the digital space, on the print media, in the broadcast media. The most important thing that you as an individual, what are you doing? Because today you leave employment, we live in a world where the mobility, job mobility across the space, we change jobs like on a daily basis, but are you able to sustain yourself in the next 18 months? About what Kwame was talking about, that the paycheck takes 18 months for him to get the next earning. So as an individual, if you are to leave this employment, are you able to keep your living standards within the next 18 months, in the next 10 years, if you don't have that paycheck coming? So there are a lot of issues that are arising, and I will tell you this with all due respect. Bankers, journalists, and lawyers, I think we have the worst financial literacy, despite the fact that I've said with all due respect, because that is a fact. Because we interact for the last 17 years that I've been in the banking industry, cutting across and maybe moving through different banks and institutions. You've seen the kind of discussions that you have personalized with different individuals, especially when they bring a financial discussion on the table. Now, worse off is when there is a discussion now post-retirement or a looming, and that is a fact, because even in the recent past we've seen a lot of media houses talking about retrenchment or notices here and there, or about 200 and left, which is typical of what we also get in the banking industry. So it is not anything different. Remember, you have an image. So at times, how do you now blend the dilemma between the public image that you are able to draw everybody around you and the future-proofing your survival beyond that paycheck? The sustainability bit of it. Because that is now where the social inclusion comes in. Because are you able to maintain the same schools that you are taking your children, or probably, because majority of us, you'll only probably be able to educate. But remember, you have an emptiness syndrome, because there comes a time that these children have to leave, okay? And you're also aging, age is catching up with you, and you're saying, at the end of the day, is it about ego generativity or is it about despair? You'll say, during our times, this is how we used to do things. But when you get an old, especially men, with all due respect to the boy child, but this is a fact, because what we deal with in a daily basis, how do you create that social wealth? You have your paycheck. The basic norm is that, are you able to have a replacement ratio, especially even with the pension schemes that we run? Now we are running the direct contribution, where the employer will be bridging this amount, and I'm able to punch in 5%, 7.5 as I age, or 10%. Am I able to kind of compete with the employer or match what the employer is giving? So as we engage, we need to reflect our balance sheets as a people, as members of the editors guild, or the journalism, or from whichever space where we play. Sit down, reflect. What we always tell most of our clients, especially even at the pension level, if your ratio of those who are in employment today, I will tell you 20% are the only ones that are contributing for their pensions, which is a very sad state. 80% are not contributing for their future, even right now, because most of the time we see kind of pay slips that comes into the bank, and somebody tells you that I've dropped this pension in the meantime to enable me qualify for a facility. It is very dangerous. The only thing that you can take charge of is your future. Because what we are saying today is that if 20%, can you take statistics that almost 80% will be kind of not able to take care of their, because as you age, truth be told, children will leave you, okay? You remain there probably with your spouse or your loved ones who can take care of you before they think. I think in the Kenyan space, we've still not invested so much in the old homes, where we take care of the old people. So we'll be thinking, and the kids will tell you, daddy or mommy or grandpa, can we take you to the children's home? So before you go there, because you need somebody to talk to, you're only taking care of your nutrition, you're taking care of your health, and probably just find space in, as you go outside in your business, to be able to fulfill that where people are also contributing like a church, you are able to place a coin, and that gives you some satisfaction. If you go to Dubai today, or even within that space, there is somebody who is in charge of happiness. How do you kind of develop and somebody to look at the statement, being a state minister for happiness? So we asked these people in 2017, how do you define this? So it starts from a very early ages of when a child is born. By the time he's brought into that space, within the trust and mistrust levels, the person who interacts with this kid first must also define that he creates a space that makes this child to be happy and know the value system that makes everybody around that space to be happy. And financial literacy is among, because everything revolves around that cash. The other thing that is coming up, because if you cannot today, if your replacement ratio, especially for your pension scheme, is not at a minimum of 30 today, for example, I'm contributing 10%, probably the employer is matching an equivalent, or at the end of the day, that ratio is not 30, you are on a danger zone. We work with the best ratio at 60. For what we mean, let me put it in simple terms. If I'm earning 200,000 today, am I able to pay myself when I retire, or if when I exit? Probably for the guys who have reached 50, that is a normal. You can exit and give notice, right? 60% is 120 in my retirement. If I'm not able to get that 120, there is something amiss. So can you work on a formula? Because the only best way is to work on it from backwards, okay? Where do I want to be, and what do I want to gain within this time? So how will I manage my debts at the end of the day? So right now you look at probably what you are. You have a house, probably you have another business somewhere. You put that into perspective, okay? Where are your liabilities in terms of loans, mortgages, here and there? If I'm able to bring that, probably my net worth, or not in the net worth, but my gross value is about 100 million. And out of all my debts, I'm still able to deal with, and I have a net of 40 million. And remember, you have a debt, okay, of maybe 40 million. By the time you go to retirement, you shall have already cleared that loan. You need to be in that space that your return on investments that you create today, and that is why even in the banking, we are now getting to approach it from another angle, because we have a responsibility to educate our customers to sustain their growth paths, right? In terms of how they borrow, if it is not sustainable, we better tell you, because guys will tell you, you need to manage, okay? When you say that I can't qualify, somebody tell you, no, I earn here, I earn here. But is it sustainable, okay? Is it sustainable? So it is better we deal with what is sustainable. And you can diversify that. We have the insurance packages that comes in form of life savings, pension plans. We have trading in the shares. But what determines how you invest is your age. That's number one. The risk appetite that you can be able to deal with, and probably what do you want to achieve in the long run. Because you have an option. The bank has a space. Even for KCB, you'll be told we have this savings account. This one can earn you up to 8.5. For how long? Because your savings plans will be in short term, medium term, and the long term. The long term is what takes you into now the pension ages, those sunset days. So we need to reflect as a people for now, just to see how is our savings plans, how is our investments plans that are put in place. The investments will range because the market more or less has a lot of products, but get to understand and sit with your people or get your advisors, financial advisors that sits with you at any given time. You have the shares, probably high risk, high returns, but you remember that our risk or share market is largely controlled by the foreigners, 70%. So any dynamic that goes in terms of macros or even in terms of the market is likely to distort it to higher margins or maybe lower margins. But we have also the money markets. As you sit there, things like the T-bills, the short term, maybe 1 year, 1.5 years. We have the long terms like the treasury bonds, more of the infrastructure space, where probably I will be investing. You have those 2 years or 16 years. The difference between the treasury bonds, I hope probably we understand, but just to make it simple, they are usually long-term in nature. I think the lowest probably get 2 years or 1 year. But I'm able to earn coupon rates like an interest that I'm paid every 6 months, right? So how do you treat or how do you now recoup the amount you get from those investments within those 6 months or 7 months or 12 months, 18 months? Am I able to take them to other investments like a pension plan, like an insurance package, like a mortgage payments where I'm able to invest that money? Because we take recognition as institutions right now, especially in the lending space, including KCB, that if I'm able to have invested, we can take that as a security because we know you will earn at the end of the day because majority of them are risk-free, okay? The only danger is that probably the government can delay or the issuer can delay to pay. But at the end of the day, they will be paid, okay? So how do you navigate within that space? Because most of the times you are able, I would say that for the mortgages, you can always have a very good relationship with your banks because there are insurances that are now taking care of restructure issues. In case there is a potential threat of retrenchment, there is insurance that can be able to take care of up to 9 months. We assume that probably you are able to reorganize yourself within 9 months or 6 months, right? Within that time, you shall have decided what to do with yourself because the insurance usually gives us 3 months full repayment, 3 months half the amount I'm paying, and thereafter we call you to have a discussion whether we can extend such kind of options. So always I would say that get to have a financial mentor. I hope all of us, probably we have different mentors. We have a coach somewhere because even the best players, Tiger Woods or Ronaldo, they have a coach, okay? And it doesn't matter. You can have a coach for your spiritual matters, for your financial matters, for your health matters, but your wellness is inclusive, especially if you fix your financial inclusions, because some of the non-communicable diseases that we kind of attract, you are working in a very space that is quite demanding, and you must always also be productive. For you to be productive, if your financial productivity is wanting, you will definitely not concentrate. Okay? So let me leave it at that for now, and as we engage further. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please appreciate him a little more loudly than. I hope you are not dozing. Or no, not dozing. You are not resting your eyes. Yeah? I can't even attempt to summarize what he's saying, but you know, let me bring my bias to this conversation. I had three things. The first one is that you need to have cash flow. Yeah, you get out of work, you need cash flow. Because Sadaka, you must have money to put in that box. Because if you go for two, three Sundays and everybody's just seeing you are not giving anything, you know, it just does something to you. So you need some light money. That's number one. That's also the money for buying a newspaper. My brother Tim knows, you know, working in a newspaper gets you used to the idea that you get 3 newspapers, especially if you are senior. You get the 3-4 newspapers for free. And suddenly, you realize no one is delivering them to your house. So you have to start making decisions like about reading the newspaper off your phone. It's very humiliating. Yeah? So it's always good to make sure you know you have some small petty money. First thing, that's what I had. The second thing then now is medium term. Yeah, how are you going to be able to deal with the things that are, you know, the regular bills, rents, mortgages, loans, and so on. And I heard Edward saying you can have a conversation about restructuring, saying, you know, I have suffered this crisis. We used to, when I was at the Nation, we used to call this suffering a domestic crisis. Yeah, when you suddenly lose your job, we used to call it suffering a domestic crisis. So when you suffer a domestic crisis, you can then have that conversation about the insurance for loans, for mortgages, and so on, to enable you to amortize and spread it out over time. And then for those who usually live with something substantial, is to think about it in the sense of, you know, not all of it goes to the plot in Kamulu. Yeah, so you are able to sort of split it so that it's able to pay you back. Because I think because of a lot of the financial insecurity many of us are coming from, you get that lump sum, 2 million shillings, and you are thinking this is the right place to go and buy that 3 acres in Matungu. And then of course now try selling it, and then you realize it's very difficult. So I hear that thing about reconciling your public image and what he was calling future-proofing survival beyond the paycheck. You know, when you are an editor, you show up in a band, everybody wants to buy you a double. You stop being an editor, you realize those drinks dry up fairly quickly. So you need to be able to figure out how you are going to manage that social capital, so that you also don't stretch it. Because sometimes, you know, if you show up and people are aware Kwamchesi is no longer working at the judiciary, you know, people start moving away from you suddenly. They suddenly have appointments outside the bar and they need to change bars and they just leave you there. It's terrible. Yeah, there is a crisis, obviously, and I think that crisis is largely out of the habits that we have, which is that we don't have financial literacy. Financial literacy is one of those things we did not grow up with. We are learning very late in life, and yeah, so we need to get a mentor. We are about now to move to the other one, which of course is very linked to money. A lot of the problems I have, a lot of the health problems I have are actually related to money. If I get stressed, it's because of the amount of money I have in the bank. And then you find me swallowing pills for high blood pressure. I even have a small machine there. Money causes a lot of health problems. This is how I'm segueing into Dr. Peter Kamunyo's presentation or speech. Because Dr. Peter Kamunyo is the head of the National Hospital Insurance Fund. Before he went there, he's led for 22 years. He's led conversations and policy around health insurance and helping people to sort of manage their health. Now, I can tell you for a certain fact that there is nothing as terrifying as illness when you are out of regular employment. For some of us, you know, we've even sold our souls. You can even agree to be a slave if you know that if your child falls sick. I had a child who needed an operation some 4 or 5 years ago, and I didn't care. I didn't care what you are doing to me at the workplace, as long as there was insurance and that operation could happen. So health is one of those things that it takes you to the complete end. You have nothing. You have no negotiation. You have no power to negotiate. And so how do we, Peter, I'm warming you up, eh? Yeah. How do we get to a place of safety and confidence? And how do you plan so that, you know, you are able to say, you know, your kids, your spouse, yourself can be taken care of, even in these sort of transitional moments? What are the things that one would need to be able to plan for? Because if you don't plan for those things, as we like to say in Kenya, it doesn't matter if your handshake is 10 million. You are only one major illness away from poverty. Yeah? If cancer shows up in your family and you have no health insurance and no plan for it, that 100 million stops. It's nothing. And so, you know, you realize that for a lot of us, even if we are middle class, when that final moment comes, before the cremation, you know, you still have to do mchango. And people are always wondering, even these rich people have to do mchango, eh? But you know, I can give you stories until tomorrow. Peter is very highly educated and very highly decorated. I don't want to bore you with details of that. You are literate. I will leave that to you in the evening when you are enjoying your drink. But for now, I'll invite him to come and talk to you about how to secure your health, both from where he is, but also from the experiences he's had. Mkaribishe tafadhali.
Kwamchesi, I was really waiting for you to bore us with those credentials. Thank you for having me. In fact, this is the second time this year that interacting with the Kenya Editors Guild. And thank goodness is also by the shore of the Indian Ocean, and I'm hoping it continues. Weka pesa mfukoni. Turn to your neighbor and tell them, weka pesa mfukoni. Weka pesa mfukoni. You know, sio kwa simu, weka mfukoni. You know, there is a very good reason why the Kenya Kwanza government plan, that was a slogan. In fact, when you look at social protection, the first thing they talk about is health. And then how you secure your earnings in old age and when you're not earning. And there's a good reason why health, even when you're talking matter social protection, is number one. Is because healthcare costs. Healthcare costs a lot. And somebody must pay. You heard what Kwamchesi said, that if his child is sick, it doesn't matter what is happening, he will go to all lengths to make sure that it is done. And people do. And that is why even a statistic in the Kenya Kwanza plan, that 36% of Kenyan families are only one disease away from poverty. You know, that person earning the 200,000, it nets off to 180, 170, thereabout. If they get an illness that requires them to spend $1 million or $2 million, will they become impoverished? Yeah? That family in Makueni that has only one cow that they milk for a few liters of milk every day, if they get an illness that will cost them 100,000, will they become impoverished? Because they'll have to sell the cow for that, isn't it? So that statistic that you write about, 1 million Kenyans becoming poor every year because of catastrophic health expenditure, which varies to scale, is true. Is very, very true. And the other thing on the KK plan is that now we are scaling up to get to UHC. And UHC, we talk about health, nini, everything, but at the end of it, in the definition, is about money again. That every one of us has access to the healthcare that they need without suffering financial hardship. So how do we ensure we don't suffer financial hardship? Economic empowerment is number one. And how do you get economically empowered? One is unapewa pesa, cash, taslimu, put it into your pocket. Yeah, that's input financing. That's the other one is government takes care of everything through taxes. The third one is risk transfer. Why? Because nobody can carry the risk, especially like healthcare, on their own. Even the very, very rich people in this country. You remember early this year, a famous lawyer who was fabulously wealthy, but who was still contributing for his medical bill because it got to areas of 20, 30 million. For government, we've tried, but it means increasing the tax burden. So risk transfer. In fact, I call it buying money. Linus, if I told you to buy 1 million shillings, how much would you spend to buy 1 million shillings? No, it's there's 1 million shillings here, and I want you to buy it. I want you to buy the 1 million. What is the price? At what? Yeah, it's 1 million. So it's 1 million shillings. Yeah? You just pay 1 million, isn't it? It's equal, same, eh? Now, here is where the game becomes interesting. When you transfer risk, it's literally buying money. 500 shillings per family is a contribution for NHIF, right? Per month, per family. Isn't it? When you've paid that 500 shillings per month, or 6,000 shillings annually, what do you get? You suddenly have 960,000 shillings in your pocket for dialysis twice a week, every week. You suddenly have 500,000 in your pocket for specialized surgery. You suddenly have access to road ambulance to anywhere in this country. So when you transfer your risk by paying your premium for insurance, what have you just done? You have bought money. You have literally bought money. So I wish I was in those campaigns of Weka Pesa Mfukoni, because that is a message that would just be talking about. Yet, we seem to have a very big challenge in doing that. Because insurance is that may or may not occur. So you wonder, should I pay, should I not? And that is a concept that especially people in this part of the world seem to have a challenge understanding. And for me, the only ask I'll have of you, apart from inviting me to the ocean side again, is we need to spread that word for our people to understand that the only way we can carry the burden of expensive healthcare is through risk transfer, through insurance. For those who have motorized vehicles, why do you insure your car? Why do you insure your car? Eh? Just in case for what? It is the law. So that you're not arrested by law. Yeah. Now, there's that time, you know, Murphy's Law always happens, Same law. So Murphy's Law happens. The day you have that little fender bender accident, you find out it had expired. How do you feel? How do you feel? Or, the same thing, you have that little fender bender, and then you check your insurance is active. Si unasikia poa sana? Yeah. It's the same thing. Where we're being told by Edward that we need to take insurance for pension insurance, etc. Again, risk transfer, buying money. And the unfortunate thing is that we take that for granted so much. Like at NHIF, our voluntary contributors are right now in the system 8.4 million. In the last financial year, the ones who were active were only 15% of those, about 1.15 million, only, out of 8.4. And those ones who are there are those ones who are using the services. There are those ones with chronic kidney disease. There are those ones who are expectant, about to deliver. Those ones with diabetes, etc. It's those ones. The other 7 million plus who have defaulted came in, used the service, and now they feel they don't need. Last week, a very good friend of mine who lives in Banana, he called me in panic to try and help him. What had happened? He has like a little shamba, and now he was preparing to till. So you know those people are paid daily. So somehow, the local goons had, and they attacked him. They attacked the farm, and really beat up and slashed and broke bones of his 6 workers. Luckily, he was not there. They were rushed to the local level 4. They found that this one needed better care, and they were all taken to KNH. At KNH, deposits were asked for. Because the first thing they were asked for is NHI from Konayo. Only one of them had active. 3 of them had, they had stopped paying a couple of years back. And the other 2 didn't have. My friend, even at Kenyatta, by the end of the second day, had to look for 200 and something thousand just to ensure that these workers of his lives are saved and they get proper treatment. The cost by the time they left the hospital was about 1.1 M for all of them. 1.1 million. I can tell you, if there is somebody who pays 36,000 shillings for his workers without even deducting from their salary every year, it's that gentleman. Because he learnt the hard way. Guess what? 2 weeks before that, I had asked him to make sure that he pays. I'd even sent to him the SMS, how to pay via M-Pesa, and he ignored. 1.1 million shillings. 1.1. And all he would have had to pay at that time to make sure that they're active was only 1,500 times 6, 9K. buying money, social protection. So why am I talking about this? Actually, even today, just now as I was coming, and I think I sent the message to one of my colleagues, somebody I don't even know, I don't know how they got my number. They're telling me they're at Metropolitan Hospital. The contract, I don't know, they're being told is only paying bed. Private insurance has paid a certain amount. What can we do? The bill is what? 180,000. He has a balance of 60,000. 60,000 potentially can make their family impoverished. But hopefully, for whatever they got through, that will save them. But now that's just the process at NHIF. The challenges that we have, and I'm telling you this in this way because I would really, really desire that you change the narrative and be the voice to convince. When we hear about national, and by the way, Kwamchesi, we were baptized in January from National Hospital to National Health Insurance Fund. When people hear NHIF, what's the first thing that comes to head? Honestly. Wheezy. Another one? That's about summarizes it, eh? 40% Ati? Scandals. Yeah. In fact, even for me, it's now exactly 2 years, 7 months since I joined. And when I joined, I asked Akina Phyllis here in our first meeting, for you, when you go out there, what was the first thing that people tell you when they find out you work for an HIF? Oh, wapika deal. You know, it's terrible. It's terrible that we are associated with that bad vice, because the flip side of what we do is amazing. We manage about 1 million patients every single month. About 200,000 inpatient, another 600 to 700,000 outpatient. These are people who ordinarily would not have had this access by buying money through paying their premiums. But you see, this business is a business of trust. Because, and the reason why many people don't pay, and why that reputation, we must work hard to turn it around, is because for insurance, you pay a premium for something that might or might not happen, and it's a small premium, and you hope that that day that thing ever happens, you will be paid for your medical bill. And for the hospitals, they also trust that when they see our patients and they submit their claims now electronically through e-claim, we shall pay that bill. And then for us, we also trust you and the hospital that when you go to hospital, through utmost good faith, you will say the truth. And the hospital is not going to bill us for hip replacement, whereas it was a little sprain, like they do for many of them. Or tell you, weka vidole hapa, you go, come back after 4 days, we discharge you, and here is 2,000 shillings. We also trust they won't do that. It's a business of trust. And to have that business of trust, you must build the positive image so that people want to buy and own it. But key is that we must be all in. Now to segue into UHC. For UHC to work, everybody must be in. So that's the second pillar. Remember, economic empowerment. Now the second one is all in, all, everybody. That's why we amended the law to obligate Kenyans. That obligation that every Kenyan above the age of 18 must be a member is not a punishment. It is a gift. You're being gifted 180,000 worth of surgery by paying 6,000 shillings. That's what it is. So we need to encourage that. And the third pillar is, of course, the benefit packages that you get. I know many people say, can't you do more? Can't you do more? We can try, but remember, again, mathematics, the numbers. The pool of funds that we have is finite. We do not get any funding from the exchequer, not even a shilling. The money that we have to pay for the claims is 100% your contribution and my contribution, and contribution for those who are being contributed for. That's what we have. So, in conclusion, ili tuweke pesa mfukoni, or we buy money, we must encourage each and every one of us to be an NHIF member. You must sell the story, because right now is not just financial freedom for you, is not just financial literacy for you. As the Editors Guild, it's your obligation to educate this country, because that's a challenge that we have. Dorothy just now has just been telling me about, is it your son? A nephew, who got treatment and they would not have been able to afford. That's a life saved. But which is a juicy story? The scandal or the life saved? I leave it up to you. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. I think Peter deserves a clap that's a little, more hearty than that. Will those who have accepted Jesus as their personal savior? Together now. Yeah, those three conversations, I think they come together. Sasa mahali tumefika ni mahali ya kufungua roho, lakini si kama hiyo ya national AIDS. I think they are close. They are close. Ni karibu hapo. Ni kufungua roho. We want to be able to just when I do scenarios building, we do this thing called hopes and fears. So if you allow me, let's just wacha tufanye, inaitwa nini, wale walienda majeshi, inaitwa kipindi cha rejarecha. Ghafla. Kipindi cha ghafla hiyo ni kutandikwa. So let's do this. Let me see by show of hands people who want to say something. We take it all round like that. If we need to take a response, we come back and do that. I've seen Shimo, I've seen Gushu, SG, Martin, and Ruth. Tuanze hivo. Yeah? And remember, we are editors. So editors are brief to the point. Aya. Mana inasaidia kutembeza microphone.
Niko nayo hapa.
Sawa.
All right, thank you. And also for the panel for their presentation. Tumeshukuru sana. Quite eye-opening and really thought-provoking. Tumejiuliza maswali mingi sana. Now, a quick one. I think this is a very perfect opportunity for us as a industry to reflect on, we should create that platform where we can keep this discussion going. I am also keen to look at, we had Dorothy speaking to us about leaving the newsroom, but I'm also thinking about people who are pushed out of the newsroom much earlier, like around, at the peak of their careers, around their 40s and all that. And journalists have this habit of we live like almost, from hand to mouth, whatever money we get is squandering and all that. So I'm looking for more investment opportunities, and speaking to the representative of KCB to see if there would be an opportunity. Mine is a request, if there would be an opportunity to offer products that perhaps could sit well for us and help us start investing much earlier and very good rates. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Let me appreciate the remarks made by the speakers, the panelists, my senior Dorothy, and I would just want to touch very briefly on this situation where we find ourselves in. Luckily for our sister Dorothy, it looks like she first opted out. But many more people here have been forced out, and many will still be forced out in coming days at their prime, never to come back. And so, as a fellow who has previously been forced out, never to come back to the active newsroom, because that's my background as a newspaper man before I went to radio. Let me say that journalists must learn this story of developing a squint, so that you're facing your appointment, you deliver upon it, but the other eye is looking out there, because really out there is where you belong, not where you're working. Because at some point or other, you'd have to hit the tarmac. So let's develop that culture of that will be out there, so as we do whatever we're going to perfect here, we know we are bound to be out there. And so we prepare safe landing. Makoha only spoke about having got to a parachute to get down. But we know Boeings just plunge down, suddenly. The other remark I want to make is the remarks from the CEO NHIF, that we need to own this conversation. I believe is right. And because I think media houses have that responsibility, we work for the people of Kenya. And if we are really going to be their defenders, then we must defend them all the way. And I would want also to indicate to him, media is so diverse now. And there are so many platforms, so many FM stations. We are there singing, nyimbo mingi mingi, and we know your budgets are constrained, but I still believe conversations can be held for us to get away, to get this doctrine out there. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, for that presentation. So my first question will go to our colleague from, or our guest from KCB, Odek, I guess. Right now, I think there is a wave of redundancies in the media, and we are involved in some of the negotiations of the package. And we realized that we have journalists who they're usually trapped by the financial institutions and the employers into getting some loans. So when they get out of employment as a result of redundancies, they suffer. Some of them lose their cars, some of them lose the facilities that they were given to them. So probably if you can briefly talk about those traps that journalists or employees get themselves into when they are getting those facilities that are offered by banks, because it's pathetic. Someone has a car that probably he has started paying the loan maybe for 4 months, then the redundancy comes. Then the first thing when he's thrown out, as much as this person may have some sources of income to continue servicing the loan, the banks suddenly, they change the conditions of that loan. And you probably, if you are given at 10% because it's negotiated by the company, the banks raises it to 15%. So I think if you can talk about that and how journalists could find themselves out of that trap. Then the second one goes to Peter, my friend Peter, and I know this issue we've always raised, and today at least it has come from you. And I have the statistics of actually people who are represented here. Let me personalize it. Here we have got people who have got that private scheme, medical scheme. Then we have those who have NHIF. And even those who have NHIF, they have got the super scheme, not the ordinary scheme you are talking about here. And is the case you are saying that someone is stuck at Metropolitan Hospital? It's the same we find ourselves in here, especially those of us who are on a private scheme, whereby probably the hospital bill is 300,000. The private insurance pay 180. You've got a balance of 120. Then you go to NHIF to clear it. The NHIF tells you, no. We only pay 6,000 for the bed. Then you have to raise now 114,000 to go and pay, because that is actually what is happening. And in the reforms that NHIF is carrying out, and we are saying that fine, as much as you may want those who are on a permanent and pensionable to be paying for their colleagues who are out there, how come we can't change the law so that by the time you have paid 180 fine, you're given that priority first? Then the NHIF can clear the rest instead of NHIF paying only bed, because that is what is happening. Because even for those who are here who are on a super scheme, we had to fight the employer to cancel the scheme that was there, because even the ordinary scheme was not helping them. So how can that actually help us in the coming reforms, so that even if private schemes pay, then NHIF can clear the balance, other than NHIF paying 6,000, then you are told you have to fundraise for the rest?
Okay, at least I was allowed to retain the car, but I had to surrender 1 million shillings to Nation. But I must tell you my story. First of all, I think my name was leaked to the social media long before I knew I was leaving. I was in Malindi with the family on holiday, and I was reading social media, and I could see that person being described as me. And so I went back to the office, and didn't go back to the office immediately, but my children were also engaging with social media, were being told now my name was used. And my children were being told by their classmates, oh, your daddy is losing his job and whatnot. I'm saying this because there's also the emotional aspect of it. Forget the financial, the health and what. So the emotionals will also happen. And I went to HR at that stage and told them, excuse me, if I'm leaving, just be decent about it and tell me. Because I've done 22 years here. All my life I've done it here. Be decent about it. And I was told, no, don't worry. But I knew I'm going. Then I'm made to prepare. I used to run the newsroom, so I used to prepare the plan for the day. Before that, my colleagues, some of whom are here, have been called to a meeting. My job has been given out and all that. I don't know. And I plan the meeting the way I would every morning, and I call the meeting by ringing a bell. I go to the knee, and the secretary comes and tells me you are needed upstairs. And everybody I'm leaving behind knows what's going to happen to me, and no one has told me about it. But anyway, long story short, before I left, there's a guy called Tanui. This guy was the first guy to call me, and he was celebrating that Nation has just handed to him talent they have wanted at the Standard. I don't know if you remember. You did. And then I got a call from Odindo and all that. And then, of course, now I'm driving out. The first person to call, of course, is Madam. Let us prepare the children so that how will they take this and all that. And before I reach home, Odindo calls me and tells me come for an interview tomorrow for a job. And then I actually go home and tell them, by the way, I could have a job at the Standard, and I'm told, where? You leave a newsroom to go to another newsroom, and you've not been in our lives, utaenda peke yako. And then, okay, long story short, the last person to call me that day was Linus Getahi, who had been our CEO. He called me about 2 a.m. and he told me, Eric, take a rest for 2 weeks. Come back. If you don't have a job, call me. I will. And he sure enough told people. So I started calling guys, receiving calls, guys telling me, oh, we were told by Linus about you and what. But before that, I think 3 years before, I'd been actually telling Churchill is not here. I'd been telling Churchill that I think I need to prepare my exit. So I was in a partnership in a PR consultancy. One of my partners was running it. I was a silent partner. And so actually when I left Nation Center, I removed my tie, put it there and went into another office. But, and then after that, Nancy calls me, and Nancy tells me that, hey, you have a talent, maybe you can train and what. Actually took, is it 2 weeks or something, to send you my CV? I think, yeah, but I did, and I hope, in fact, I have a class on Wednesday again at Aga Khan. So anyway, you are only as good as the contacts that you have, and your good name. Let me tell you, I have heard horror stories about my colleagues and how the dirt that they're involved in, and nobody will touch you there, because if your price is a bottle of whiskey, you'll be sent for a bottle of whiskey sometimes. But if I didn't know even how, but then one of the things that you must know is how to cost your labor. I was taught that by Africa Practice. I can name them. Because they gave me one of they subcontracted us to handle that Kenyatta National Hospital surgery. I did crisis communication management for Kenyatta. I actually told the board, you are going to be fired. Imagine, and I'm expecting them to pay me, but I told them, I'm honest. I'll tell you that. You are going to be fired, but we must save an institution called Kenyatta. If we agree on that, we can engage. If not, sidhani Kaskuma siwezi kosa. So anyway, you must know how to cost your labor. There's a way of doing it. You must know how to write projects. How to write projects for jobs. It is actually a talent. If you want somebody, there are people who know how to do it. So please, if you can get those skills, you must become a debt collector. I've been conned by editors who were there before me. Somebody went with my 3 million. It's okay. It's a lot of money. Yeah. Yes, a colleague. If I tell you the name, you all know him. He has probably conned some of you. I will not tell you.
He might be a member. You go next. He might be a member. We need to protect him.
No, you are protecting. Is it me?
Yes.
Me. Well, mine are not questions. I'm just thinking in terms of what you've said. When you talk about the insurance thing, I'm just thinking that, as you've said, more people need to be told about it, because it will save lives, it will save lifetimes and everything. So I'm just thinking, I know, I'm just thinking, if you could, it's an opportunity.
Dada,
you could work.
didn't tell us your name first, eh?
Nope, the other people did not say their names, so I'm just assuming that the trend is silence.
I'm picking you out.
Okay, well, my name is Razia, and I'm from Tanzania. Have given us a discount, and all the editors who want the medical insurance, they pay a small amount of money, and then they get that by virtue of that. So that could also be another opportunity that you could maximize in, because as collective as you are, you could go and you already have a contact, so your lives can be easier. You make sure that everybody has. And also, I'm also thinking that in terms of, you could use the editors to whichever way they can help you. And either you pay them or you pay them in kind. You give them that insurance for the people who do not have, so that they take this information and make sure that all the Kenyans who need to access this, they will get it, because they have all those avenues. And another thing is that it could have been nice if you could have been specific, because you know the kind of lifestyles these people have. So you point the right products and you say, I think for you this will really help you out. And also another thing you could maximize in, what we used to maximize in, we've got many contacts with the government. We've been given almost land for free. I know in Kenya it's not possible, but you can work out deals with different companies where you can do services for them and you can get things for your people free of charge. We barter services. That could probably help you. Thank you.
Thank you. Gushu.
Okay, my first question is to the KCB representative. And it's a question you talked about that you need to save at least between 30 to 60% of your pay if you want to live prosperously, if there's such a word, when you retire. That assumes you started working what age and you'll stop at what age for you to live well within that percentage. And then to NHIF, number one, is a super cover available to, for lack of a better word, hustlers, wananchi wa kawaida, or editors for that matter? Because I see it mostly taken by either civil servants or parastatal bodies. Is it available to a wider pool than that? Because the super cover is actually a very good cover for those who know it. But it seems to be either information is not availed or is not available. Then second, maybe just touching on what Eric had started on. This phenomena whereby if you are admitted to hospital, private insurance pays minus NHIF. I think something needs to be done as part of the reforms that you guys are undertaking, whereby if you're leaving a hospital and you have a private insurance and you have NHIF, you don't live with any bill. Because sometimes it's very confusing. You have a bill of 200,000, then these guys tell you NHIF is only paying for ABCD. And then the EFGH that is left becomes very unclear. Whether you're supposed to clear it, and then this other big animal called pre-authorization. There's a lot of information gaps around the pre-authorization methods. What requires pre-authorization? What doesn't? Who authorizes it? Within how many days? And how is it done? Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have Peter and Edward and Dorothy take a pick of the cherry, and then let me just see, by a show of hands, how many other people would like to fungua roho after this. Tim, Francis, To, those are three, and yeah, Prof. So those four, let's take this round, and then we come for those four, and then I think we can release you. Sawa, please. Yeah? The mic is on.
Thank you very much for those comments and questions. And Eric, my friend, I'm very happy that you asked that, because very many presentations, I start by describing all that and how it happens. At the end of it, nobody seems to have picked it. So I'm happy that you've asked that. In fact, I'll ask you a question. Does NHIF have any exclusions? Yes. Mm-hmm. Which ones?
For those private hospitals and for those who have private medical schemes.
Okay. Does NHIF have an age limit of joining? Huh? How many children can be put on an NHIF cover of your children? How many? What's a... Huh? If Kwamchesi buys you too much whiskey tonight and you have to be evacuated to Nairobi by road ambulance, would NHIF pay for that? Huh?
Depends on the cover you have with NHIF. Whiskey.
Okay. Yeah. And actually, honestly, I would really want that on this one we really work together, because all this information, and we have tried to talk about it, but it doesn't land, it doesn't percolate to the last mile. And I'll start with, let me start with the cover that we're talking about. The cover that is available to the hustler and to everybody is actually the one called super cover. Super cover does not have exclusions. The only exclusion we have actually is pandemics, because pandemics is a matter that is handled by national government. Why? Because a pandemic is a global phenomenon. We don't even declare it ourselves. It's declared by WHO. You don't know extent, amount, etc. That's the only one. Number two, the benefits under super cover have been curated to ensure that our members get the treatment they need and do not suffer financially. Where do they get the treatment from? Now we are going to the hospitals. We just launched a new contract, 1st of July this year. And with the hospitals, these two contracts we have one called comprehensive contract and another one called non-comprehensive contract. In the comprehensive contract, you will walk in and walk out without paying a single shilling, whether you're insured or not. In the non-comprehensive contract, the reimbursement, you might be required to pay something extra. So there we reimburse like the bed, we reimburse certain packages like MRIs, etc. It might surprise you, by the way, you're saying that NHIF has not covered, but almost all the MRIs that are done in this country now, it's NHIF that pays for them. Almost 100% of dialysis that is done in this country, whether you're insured or not, it's NHIF that pays for it at the back. Cancer treatment, almost 90% of it is actually catered for by NHIF. Again, your private insurance fronts it here at the back. Now, the hospitals that have comprehensive contracts right now that we have signed up are over 7,000. The ones with non-comprehensive contracts are about 276 only. However, these 276 tend to be the popular higher-end hospitals. But many of the others are still available. So, and why they've chosen the non-comprehensive is their business model. Yeah, they have marble on the floor and all that. So that's what they provide. And all these people, when they go to those hospitals, they do get the care that they need. So it is where you go. It is where you go. And the list of the ones with comprehensive are available on our website. Now, the payment of the bills, and it's good that you raised that question of first loss and second loss. And it's something about, like in government, you don't react in good time. Because previously, before 2015, where the only thing we used to pay for was bed rebate, private insurance used to have this statement on their claim forms. We pay net of NHIF rebate. Sindio? 2015 is when we introduced the packages. We introduced outpatient, we introduced, cancer package for rehabilitation, for mental illness. We introduced surgical package, both major, minor, all those nice things. But we did not set the rules of engagement. Very quietly, the insurance companies dropped, we paid net of NHIF rebate. The Kawad rebate dropped off. We pay net of NHIF. And that is a problem. So what we've been doing, we've been financing those who can afford at the expense of those who cannot afford that which a social health insurer needs to be doing. Why is it that we are paying for all the MRIs at Nairobi Hospital for people who have 20 million shilling insurance cover? Why? Anyway, so that's why the law was amended, and it's not that we abdicate our role, because if you don't have insurance, it's fine. But if you do have, that means you're slightly better up. So let the private insurance take the first loss. If it's exhausted, NHIF comes in and takes over the balance. So you still don't lose. And we still don't punish your social insurer. And this needs to be talked about in detail, or not even detail, in a way that the people can understand. Now, on pre-authorization, pre-authorization is a term. Insurance, like you said, we are buying money, is literally an open check. Last financial year, we collected premiums of slightly over 80 billion. Of that, 71.6 billion was paid out in claims to hospitals. medical fraud is estimated to be anywhere between 3 to 20%. If we take hapo katikati 10%, it is possible that about 7 billion is medical fraud. And how do they do it? Fake impersonation, which we try to cure now with the biometric, but they still do it. Because even right now, with that biometric, at the hospital, they register your 9 fingers, moja ni ya receptionist. Yes, and we have found them. They do that. You go in, you saw the Duafia story that was making some 2 rounds. There are students who have never even been to hospital. We've gone in with a headache. The bill comes. It was a craniotomy. Yeah, na alipewa 2 Panadols. You know, things like that. So that is why certain procedures, because the volume is so big, there's no way you can be able to have a retail interface to verify. We do the pre-authorizations remotely by the case managers so that it's on record, the details that are required and the authorization amounts that are provided. It's one of the cost containment measures, a practice that is done worldwide. We are looking forward to actually changing the system to have now more advanced ways of dealing, like what they call diagnosis related groups, that once you put a certain diagnosis, there's just a certain amount that is allocated to that group, and that's what you get. And hopefully that will make things a lot easier. So the pre-authorization time, we were not doing very well because of also the numbers and technology, everything, but the time has reduced now, like for emergencies, to less than 6 hours. But within 24 hours, the pre-authorizations are done. However, we are always also blamed for mistakes that are not ours. The hospital will tell you tunangojea pre-authorization, but they've not sent the authorization request. But there's a way that you can know. Ensure that your numbers are registered so that when the hospital launches a pre-authorization, you get a notification. Pre-authorization request. When we authorize, you get a notification. So again, the power is within our hands. So this we need to help, but well, for sure, one of the things is to make sure that the pre-authorizations are done within reasonable time to save time and lives. I really like the proposals about finding ways to incentivize people joining, discounting premiums for specific groups, or even payment in kind. And I think that is something that we will need to look at, because we are in a culture, we can't divorce ourselves from that culture of what's in it for me. What's in it for me? But you see, on this other side, we are a social health insurer. And once everybody is obligated, then the ball game changes. That why are you incentivizing? You know, I'm not marketing to you to buy. It's a must that you must have, just like motor vehicle. But I think it might be a good idea, because one of the things that we are pushing for, remember what we said, everybody must be on board. So the law says everybody who can pay to pay, and those who cannot pay to be identified and supported. The government is obligated to do that. We know they have paid for 1 million households. We have a balance of 4.1 million. The budget, you know how it is. So one of the things that we can do is, as people who might be able to adopt a family, adopt a village, adopt someone, just to pay for them so that we can bridge that gap. So I think even for us, in terms of that is maybe like to the guilds, people who come in a group, we also maybe give you a few memberships to donate to people who might not be able to do. And that might be able to encourage, and you also, a sense of social responsibility. So thank you for those great questions. And I think now we've summarized what would have been on a PowerPoint.
I think I picked 3 questions from Gujo. All right, so I think I'll start with the question from Gujo. Okay, when we talk about the replacement ratio, what we talk about between 30% to 60%, I think within our spaces, especially with our employers, we have the fund management, especially for the pension schemes, right? So there is those, like most of us, I think those who joined after 2006 probably might have moved from other employments after that 2006 in the current scheme where they kind of match, right? So if you look at the percentage that you are contributing today, right, and what the employer is also contributing, if you can aggregate that percentage as a ratio of your gross income or pensionable income, depending on how it is computed, you should be working at a figure of 30%. Most of the fund managers, because it depends on which type of pension scheme that you are running, because they are either the segregated scheme where we have the fund managers, we have the administrators, and we have the guys who run with the funds, like the banks in most cases. So where there is an aggregated, your fund managers are supposed to give you that kind of on a tailor-made, and that is what the trustees for most of those pension schemes are usually supposed to tell us, that if I'm running on this kind of scheme, you can, as an individual, probably running at a 20%, but can you take another pension scheme that is able to kind of aggregate that to a minimum of maybe 30% or take it beyond that level? So that is what we are looking at. So basically, I think what I would say, we have like KCB Capital from our end who runs with such kind of proposition, and wherever you get any service from even our places or any fund manager who is in the market, right, can be able to give you that kind of, or take you through, or I can take your number probably just to take you on a simulation, a model that works with that 30%, and how much you need to save, maybe from your employer, you still comply to their third rule, okay, and what you can now plug in and add from maybe any other scheme that you bring on board. And that can also be done by even insurance companies, right? Yeah. Yeah, so like we have the intermediary, the bank assurance intermediary can plug in the KCB Capital. On the other side, there are those fund managers who are within those units to kind of help you consolidate, so that when I want to say that I'll be having this minimum of 30%, or I'll probably push it beyond that 30%, I'll be able to meet my target. Now, I think I'll come to Eric. Looking at the traps that we always have, especially with retrenchment, I think as an institution or as KCB, and for most lenders, there is what we call the consumer protection. And part of that consumer protections, there is disclosures that needs to be done. You have a right, or probably just to get deep, especially for our members, let's educate them to get more deeper in those conversations before they sign yours on those offer letters, right? It is very noble to be disclosed all information. Nowadays, when you get to the banks, I believe you have what we call a TCC, total cost of credit disclosure, where you usually sign and you are able to know that this is the average percentage rates, APR, that I will pay at the end of the day. The normal ratios that we usually work with, anytime I'm taking a debt, is it a bad debt or a good debt, okay? A bad debt, like buying a car, that is a bad debt, because of course the car will be depreciating. So I don't expect you to becoming, it is convenient, but you see, based on Abraham Maslow, there are those needs that you'll acquire, but know that it is a bad debt. To me, it is a bad debt. If it is not for investment, definitely it is a bad debt, but we are still forced to get it. That does not mean, so you have like risk mitigations on how you balance the bad debt and the good debt, okay? So the good debts are the ones that go now to investments, okay? So if I'm taking a mortgage, definitely I know my replacement ratio. For example, if I'm charged cost of capital or cost of that mortgage is 10% or 10%, you'll need to be able to know that I'm working on a house or a mortgage that is able to compensate. Most of our rates, especially even for houses, are not appreciating. The average appreciation rates are either lying between 3.8 and around 5%. That is normal averages, okay? So we need to really look at which options of investment, especially even in these real estates, do I go for? Are they able to give me at minimum? Because the bare minimum of any return on investment is the treasury bill rates. If you are getting anything less, you are losing, okay? So for even mortgages, there is usually a clause on those insurances that says that, are you able to be taken when there is a retrenchment? Please check that offer letter. Because it has happened quite often in the industry, and it is something that we deal with on a daily basis. Immediately, you need to maintain a very good relationship with your bank. Immediately you get a notice and you have the letter, please forward that letter to the bank and tell them, this is where I am. For us, immediately that letter lands, we send it to the underwriters, okay? Then we get to engage. The employer gives a formal notification from their side because it has to be confirmed that that is the position. Then we move from there, and we've done it for quite a number. They'll be paying that amount, full amount for 3 months, half of the amount, and they reduce it in that ratio. So we consider that period of 6 months to 9 months adequate for you to now reconnect and probably see what you can do with this property. I know in most cases, especially if they are residential mortgages, we get so emotionally connected to these properties, right? So at times, we need to look whether this is going to be a dead capital for me or not. Because you can still take that money and probably reinvest. And that is now where the options that come in especially at those retrenchment. And we look, as you sit today in that employment, at the time that you exit, assume at 50, because we had talked about Guchu saying, at what point? I expect most all of us to kind of plug into this insurance immediately they get into employment. Because this is a conversation that we can have as probably employers or line managers or colleagues. This is a healthy discussion that needs to go on in each and every institution to help the generation that is in that employment. You remember, I said 20% are the only ones that are contributing into these pension schemes, because even the government is facing a lot of challenges with the superannuation cover right now, okay? Each and every time, most of these guys drop some of those payments, okay? So let's have a conversation that at any given time somebody is exiting, is able to take care of, earn about 50%, then talked on these restructures with your bank, have a relationship. Sasa. Then I think Zari has left. So we have the saving options, and we also have the assets. But as I've said, bad debt, good debt, right? Let's discuss investment debts for you. Then we now have the shares, we have the unit trusts, we have the money markets, we have the treasury bills as options that are offered within the umbrella of KCB and the KCB intermediary, insurance intermediary. So let's have these kind of conversations with your bankers. It is a personalized relationship. We are all in it. Whenever a problem arises, let's have a discussion. The only problem rise with the bank, like those things, what somebody has mentioned here, that another rate is increased, okay? No. All those things are printed. Always they say that the offer letter, small, the ones that they want you to see, they are very small. They are very big. The ones that they don't want you to see are very, but take time just to understand. But I believe somebody mentioned here, your network is your net worth. Have somebody who can talk about your issues behind any closed door, okay? Like somebody was able, you had somebody calling, can you move to standard the next day? And that is kind of what these kind of social networks are there to do. Usikue, because I know the danger, ukienda huko nyumbani, wewe ni mheshimiwa. If you hear those cliches of mheshimiwa, especially when you're coming to December, unajua lazima utoboke, si ndio? Lazima utoboke. But don't be in a situation where at those old ages, we are now talking about despair, you are not able to have those mheshimiwa. Hata wewe utakuwa unasema mheshimiwa kwa wengine, ndio watoboke kwako. They untie you in our language in the village.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much, Edward. the thing that I want you to address when we finish this other round of questions, as you do your, Peter has told me he needs to leave, but as you do your departing remarks, one of the things you need to address, and it's an elephant in the room, which is when you are caught derelicto en flagrante. When you are caught pants down. You have not invested, you've not put any, what do you call it? Any pension, there is no saving, then yeah, life has happened to you. For people who are about my age or slightly over, is there hope? What is it that can be done? I am very hopeful. I'm a very hopeful person. So I am sure there is probably something that can be done. So I would like you to please park that so that you can talk about it. I think Peter has mentioned that he really needs to go. So I think we take Tim in very quick succession. Tim, Francis, Tobista, Dr. Amunyo.
Thank you, Komchesi, and the panelists for those insightful discussions. My name is Timothy Wanyonyi. I first of all need to confirm that what Shimoli said is true about his exit from the nation. He actually came to me and said, Tim, I've been told to hand over to you. But in my defense, Shimo, I didn't know. And I think it wasn't, even if I knew, it wasn't me to tell you. That was the work of the management. Anyway, when my turn came, barely a year later, and I left the newsroom. Just like Shimoli, I already had a company. But unlike him, I was not doing PR. I was doing more of editing, designing, printing. If you had a report, if you had a book, I could edit for you. I will get your designer. I'll get your printer. So under those contacts, of course, I left with them. Number two, I think Nation also gave me an editing contract for 6 months. I was working from home before COVID, actually. I was editing page 1 stories from my house in Kitengela. That contract expired after 6 months. Sometime along the line, I think I was also given a contract to write a column in Seeds of Gold on agroforestry for about 1 year. It also ended. I have doubled in all these investments you are talking about. I'm in treasury bills, I'm in infrastructure bonds, I'm in the money markets. They are good, but payments, the coupons, they give you twice a year. So all those things, and as Komchesi said, some jobs you do, then a check comes after a year. SG here and I think Churchill, they literally dragged me from my trees and said, Tim, help us on the MCK board. So I served on the Media Council board 3 years. That term has expired. Odindo called me at Aga Khan, where Nancy is. I worked there for 6 months. COVID came. It ended. All these ups and downs, the most constant source of my income since I left the newsroom has been what was actually my hobby. What was actually my hobby? I have been planting trees since I was in primary school, actually. My first tree I planted in 1980. And it's still there now. Now, the value I'm adding on those trees is honey production. Yeah? I don't cut them to make charcoal or timber or kuni. I just let the bees get the nectar and the pollen from the flowers, and they make honey for me, and I sell honey. I'm currently doing around 600 kgs of honey per year. Okay? From only one farm in Soy. I have another farm in Bungoma, Webuye, another one in a place called Kapchai, another one in Oloserian, Kajiado, which are also coming on production. Actually, our target is 1 ton of honey per year. We are getting into certification by KBS, Kenya Bureau of Standards. Once you get that certification, you can export. So I am sure when my treasury bonds coupon comes twice a year, I'm sure I can sell honey almost every 2 months. So my challenge to people who are getting out, in fact, not people who are getting, once you get in, yes, start planning. And don't get limited to this box of newsroom. You will be surprised where your source of income will come from once you live there. And look at your hobbies. How can you turn those hobbies into income? The way I've done with honey production. These days, I don't plant any tree without researching whether it's a bee forage tree or not. Lastly, sort out your debts. I think they are the most challenging things when you live. That calamsam, if there's anything you can do, sort out your debts. Be debt-free. Actually, I think I was one of the people who used to be paid a lot at the Nation, but I was constantly broke when I was in employment. But now I have more money in the pocket because I sorted my debts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just wanted a clarification from the NHIF CEO on the insurance for school children, mostly secondary, Linda Mama, and the normal cover. Because at times I find it's like a duplication. So maybe you could just clarify on that.
I have a quick question, an ethics question related to NHIF. I have a problem with the penalty. If healthcare is a constitutional right, penalizing someone for missing a payment or paying late, be it at institutional or individual level, I struggle with that, and I wonder if there's a place to address that and look at it more humanely, that rather than punish someone, is there a way to support somebody to get there? The other issue I have, and this is a question/comment, are NHIF cards linked to particular hospitals? I know somebody who needed eye care, and so would be told you either choose to go there, or place X or place Y. And I also struggle with that on an ethical level, because if your specialist has moved, whatever it is, if it is National Health Insurance Fund, or if I've moved to Maralal, do I need to now start changing my card? So the question really is about fundamentally the ethics of care. Thank you.
I could hug you. Actually, I will hug you. Thank you for suspending that question. We will come here. You see Sam is standing there and intimidating me with his beard. So I'm not looking that direction. So we start with Peter, who has indicated that he needs to go. We've stretched it, but I think it's an important conversation. We take Peter, we take Dorothy, and then we finish with Edward.
Great questions and concerns. The schemes that we have what I would call 3 buckets of schemes. We have the National Health Scheme, which is where we give the super cover. We have the Enhanced Schemes or Managed Scheme, which is where the civil servants, national police, county governments, other parastatals are. And that is a specific scheme negotiated by government for their employees. It's a G2G. And then we have a fund, which is the Linda Mama. Let me explain this. So on the national scheme, we have 3 groups. statutory contributors or formal sector, that is most of us who are employed, informal sector, who is voluntary contribution, and then sponsored programs or sponsored. Under sponsored, we have the health insurance subsidy program for orphaned and vulnerable children, for the elderly and severely disabled, and also the indigents, yeah, who identified, the 1 million that are now being paid for. So that is in one group, and that they enjoy super cover. The secondary school students enjoy an extra cover to that normal super cover. The secondary school students actually enjoy the enhanced scheme cover. And that's what government has paid for these secondary school students. So, for example, if one happened to, on a national scheme, being sent abroad for treatment abroad, the limit is usually 500,000, or according to the package. But for Eduafia, it would go up to the limit for the enhanced schemes, which is up to around 2.5 million thereabout. So they have a wider scope. On the national scheme, the access for walk-in, walk-out without paying a single shilling is to comprehensive facilities. But for the enhanced scheme and Eduafia, they can actually be taken to any hospital. They can actually go to Nairobi Hospital and be treated fully. So that is the difference. Then Linda Mama is a fund. And actually, if you remember, that fund used to sit at the ministry until 2014. But then they brought it to NHIF because we had the capacity to manage it. So, and the eligibility for Linda Mama is any woman in the country with an ID. You don't have to be an NHIF member to enjoy Linda Mama. That is the big difference. So long as you have an ID and you register at the hospital, you will get antenatal care, delivery, and postnatal care for the child up to 1 year, sponsored under Linda Mama, even if you're not a contributor, so, or a member. So the difference, and where you can say it probably can be a duplication, if we get to a state of UHC where even all the indigents have been sponsored, then that cover, of course, would fall off, because then they would already be having the NHIF cover. Penalties to ensure that people actually remain, and even if you fall off because of erratic incomes and whatever, it's easy to come back, was a key consideration in the amendment of the Act. Actually, in the Act now, the penalty for defaulting is 10%. Before, the penalties were 2 times or 5 times, yeah? 2 times for corporates and up to 5 times for voluntary contributors. That has been reduced to only 10%, and the prevailing CBK rate for the corporates, which right now is about 10-11% thereabouts. So we've addressed that. And in addition to that, at each of our 70 branches, there is a penalty advisory committee. So in certain circumstances, it can also be waived when you do apply. So we have tried to make sure that our members stay on and stay on board. Provider selection. Like I said earlier, it's an open check. The providers that you're advised to go to are providers that we have a contract with, that they have agreed to our charges. They have agreed that when you go in, they will give you that service that is written there, and you will walk out without them asking you for an extra coin. That is why there's a provider network. Our desire is to have everybody on board. Like public facilities, we've contracted all of them countrywide, 5,600. The rest, we're working. Actually, on our panel with 8,300, this country has a total registered facilities of 12,000. So we are only 4,000 shy of having the universe of all providers in the country. And that's what we are looking forward to as we get to UHC. But they must agree to our contractual terms. Thank you very much.
As I invite Dorothy to come here, please, I would request you to put your hands together to give Peter a major, major send-off and thank you because he's leaving us. Eh? Edward, tunamaliza. We are not doing well on time, but I think it's important. Yeah.
After all those brilliant contributions, I don't know what else to add, but it's good to comment on what my brother Tim has just said, you know, that a hobby can actually be your fallback, but some hobbies also need management backup. And I can confess that that is one of my greatest weaknesses, you know, and I've had to drop idea after idea. The only one that has been a sure anchor has been my profession as an editor. And as I said before, I believe that if you are a good editor, your reputation will go ahead of you. And for goodness sake, invest in your editors. I mean, as they said, you know, they were being called by, you know, that was Shimo and others. They were being called, come, come, come. And there's nothing as good as that, you know, either come or we have a job here. It is needed so urgently, you know, can you do it for us? And if you have invested in your reputation, I can assure you that you shall never go to bed hungry. And I can also add that my first exit was at Tender 36, you know. I'm almost twice that now. And it has never gone wrong because there'll always be somebody who needs that service because your reputation goes ahead of you. And as my brother Kwam said, don't burn bridges. Don't burn bridges because you may want to cross on that very bridge next time. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, Dorothy, I find it difficult to interrupt her. Now it's time for Edward to come and give his final concluding remarks. As he does, there's going to be tea. I'm told that tea is at the Mahogany Lounge. Yeah, so we get Edward here. He responds. I think you've been extremely patient. I haven't seen anyone nodding or doing interesting things. We are doing well.
I thank you as we wind up this session. It has been quite insightful. And I've also learned a lot within the convention. But allow me to talk about what Kwam talked about, because it is good to be poor while young than being poor while you are in your old age. There's a friend of mine who always tells me, I'm going to Manila, I'm going for holiday wear, and he's always in his farm. So I think what he talked about is also quite refreshing that we need to start working on. But the by and large, when you get out and probably you find that you have your lump sum, now you find yourself there, you are in a retrenchment, please have a personal conversation with the fund managers, especially for the pension schemes, to get you on an annuity kind of an arrangement, or what will you want, kind of a cash-backed kind of an arrangement, or an annuity kind of an arrangement where you're able either to pull that money every month or do we want to invest it and maybe get the future value of that money? Probably if you are able to, but that depends now on how you diversify, because like what he had said, probably will be getting his coupons from the treasury bonds every 6 months, but he also has other sources of income that probably could have put in place. What we always say, and we always have this conversation, please try something while you are still in employment, and probably it should be something that is very close to you, that you'll be able to connect with at any given time, something that you'll do passionately and you'll die for as you do it. Okay, I was just telling Kwam, because of the programs that we've been running, Council of Ad hoc Archdiocese of Kisumu, we've had even very successful engagements even where we sit, because assume you have even like in Laikipia, there is a Catholic group of 30 people that have come and they have aggregated, and they have their stocks of bananas, and they are able to feed themselves from that farming, from that food forest that is just at the back. Right now we please, you'll need to readjust and get yourself to have even vertical farming just behind your apartment, some 2 or 3 strands to do tomatoes, do onions, do the terrace vegetables, or anything that you probably could complement. Because fund managers, and that is where we come in as an institution. There are so many that are also dealing with the unit trust. They are all licensed. If you go to the CMA, you'll get all the unit trusts listed there that you can be able to contact. All right. Now, if you want, like all the traders, you can also go to the RBA for the ones that deal with those pension schemes, and they can always be able to advise. So go to the RBA portal, you'll all get the lists that are there. But you can talk to banks that deals with those propositions, either from the capital side or on pension angle. I think KCB, we deal with that. ABSA, I think quite a number in the market are there, plus the insurance companies that are there. You can always engage, because you'll be more enlightened on which scheme do I need to enroll on, such that I'm able either to continue with my normal life. Because at that particular time, you really need to look at yourself. You need somebody, you sit with somebody just to advise you from that point. Look at how you are dealing with your debts, how you are dealing with your lump sum payments. We are always having those kind of guys from our side, both at the insurance and KCB Capital. We can have those engagement just to take you through. So feel free to engage, because that is the point, that if you don't talk or if you don't engage, you can run into depression. We've seen quite a number, because we are told the next day this guy probably got paralyzed, went into a coma, and this is what happened. Some of them, a lot of mental issues currently in the market. So you really need to speak out. You need to speak out, because that is the current trend that we are having. Because even for us, that is why now we go to even to those levels of insurances. Thank you.
Thank you. We have come to the end. So at this moment, I will just I will ask 2 things of you. To kindly put your hands together to thank the panel of Dorothy Kweyu, Edward Odek, and Peter. And then finally, to thank all the members and our guests, because this session has been engaging. It would not have been possible without your involvement. People put their soul and their heart in it. And SG, I'm told tukitaka kuendelea na hiyo session ya kufungua roho, he's doing something. So put hands together for yourselves. Some you can forgive me. You can just see the nature of the session. I come and take over. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate Kwamchetsi as well. I like the way he has transformed from a dictator to a very humble man towards the end. But thank you very much for a very well done job. I do not want to be a hindrance to you going to the beach, but allow me to welcome a gentleman from Kenha, Samuel Kumba, to just speak very briefly, because now you're the one who's going to be between people going to the beach for a stroll. Karibu sana. Let's welcome him, tafadhali.
All right. Good afternoon. Yeah, I see a lot of my mentors here, a lot of my seniors, and therefore I don't want to say much because they can summon me at some point. The only advantage I'll take is that I will only deliver a message from my Director General. So it's not me if I take long. Now, I work at the Kenya National Highways Authority, whose mandate is to develop, maintain, and build certain classes of roads. In this case, classified as S, A, and B. Now, maybe a paragraph just to clarify which are Class A's. S are normally the superhighways. We have one in the country currently, that's Thika Superhighway. And Classes A are those roads that touch one nation to the other, from border to border, that run within the country. And then Class B are those roads that run from one, like former provincial headquarter to another. And occasionally, Kenya Roads Board gives us some classes of Class C road. These are roads that run from, one town of the provincial headquarter to another. Now, the authority is very happy to be associated with the Kenya editors for the very purpose that through you we are able to communicate and reach out to our audience, and therefore we will be partnering going forward. And we'll continue to partner, especially because through you and through your writers, we are able to tell our story. Now, the DG says that I appeal to you all to assist him in taking care of our roads, ensure that they are not littered, they are clean, and they are not destroyed through overloading. So that is a request, and you'll be able to do that through your various platforms. And also, it takes concern that some of your writers are not able to differentiate between Kera, Kena, Kura, and all that. But he says that that information is out there, and that if the writers take a little more time, a minute or so, they'll be able to differentiate that. So I won't spell out for you, but you can insist on your the writers taking note. But of major concern is the fact that in the development of the roads we do, a little back, some counties could easily take credit for them and actually proceed and even raise billboards and say they have constructed. And you know what happens to the books of accounts when they do that. And therefore appeals that our writers, especially those who do infrastructure reporting, should be able to go deep a bit and take, put responsibility to the actual agents that develop those roads, so that people or institutions don't take credit for projects that they did not develop. Second last is that there is also a little bit of concern with some of the writers, a bit lazy, I can say, in some newsrooms, the fact that they don't dig down facts and therefore misrepresent. Is of the opinion that we cannot gag the media, therefore we give information, but gets a bit worried when there's a lot of speculation, yet we are open and out there to be reached. So when he gets to learn of conversations like, 9 billion issued for rehabilitation of Mombasa Road has not worked, yet there's no even a cent of the 9 billion that has been released, he gets a bit worried. So what it needs is just to place a phone call to the authority and you'll get the correct information for the writers. And another area of concern has been that, the cost of constructing a road per kilometer. It's an engineering concept, but literally taken is that some journalists estimate the cost of constructing a road per kilometer irrespective of the terrain. So if my road is passing through the ocean, they expect it to cost the same as my road passing through a place like this. It wouldn't be the same because of the technology that goes into it. And therefore, but largely he's happy with the partnership that we have with the media and promises that, of course, without you, we can't tell our story. And therefore, we'll partner going forward in that regard. Finally, I'll work to acknowledge that I have a team here that you can reach out in terms of getting inquiries. Maybe I'll ask them to stand and wave. The team from Kenya, they're there. Thank you very much. And that if you don't reach me, because, for example, we have promised to be open, call anytime, even if it's midnight. Every minute we know that there are clients on our road. Every second we have a stakeholder on the road, on our product, and therefore we should be reached. But in case I won't be reached, and there's also a face that I'll be asking to reach most of you most of the time so that he's able to give you info and tell our story. Maybe I can call him Karaoke just to show the face here so that when he calls you, you are able to tell who is calling. I know there is a lot of, they call them masqueraders around town. We have had problems, especially with our stakeholders who have created a website called kenya.or.ke and they are giving jobs and people are paying, and they're also giving tenders as well and people have paid and they come and say, where is that tender I paid for? But we keep sensitizing that very many people work for Kenya even when they don't. So, but if he calls, he can say his name.
Good evening. I think the face of Kenya is not that handsome, but but this is it. My name is Karaoke Thuku. I'm a senior communications officer at the Kenya National Highways Authority. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now I've been accused of gender bias. I have ladies, beautiful ones. Maybe the team leader for customer care, Leader Wahu. You can step forward so that they see we are gender sensitive and maybe they want to hear the voice. That's the last one. I'm not calling anybody else after this because I also want to step on the beach. Very important.
Good evening, everyone. You're doing well? Okay, my name is Lydia Wahu. Senior Assistant Corporate Communication Officer. Glad to be here. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I saw her looking at me as though to tip on what to say. I've taught them speech making, so I didn't want to do it up here. It is their duty to figure out that 1 minute elevator speech whenever they have an opportunity. So I don't want to take much time, but thank you very much. And I also thank my mentors and yes. Yes? Yes. This is the correct position. Yes. Okay. Okay, final one. Okay. Maybe let me go the three in reverse, and then we'll get just one and finish. Now, signage, actually we have a major concern with signage, and I can assure you that a program has been designed in terms of how to ensure that there's proper signage of the roads, including road markings. It's been largely missing, And we have instructed all our contractors that once they finish the roads, they put the good quality. The only challenge we have had with signage is that people are vandalizing our signage. You put a metal, it goes the following day. Now, but we have a solution. We have instructed that our contractors use non-metallic materials so that they are not vandalized. So a little bit more expensive, but we have to innovate to survive. If you drive around the southern bypass, it's dark. Why? Because all the cables have been pulled out through vandalism, worth around 800,000. And that we have to, take the, cost of repairing. But again, what have we done? We have decided to go solar on that road so that there are no cables with copper to vandalize. So we try to be innovative even as they do that. Now on Mombasa Road, now this is the position. The construction of Mombasa Road led to some destruction of, the expressway led to some destruction of the lower road. The destruction was that arising from the company building the express road, and also that arising from relocation of services, like Nairobi Water here, ICT and all that. The constructor of Nairobi Expressway will reinstate the damage they caused in due course of constructing the road directly, and that we have given them up to the end of December to do it. So if you pass there are works going on. Number two, the works that were, the damage that was occasioned by relocation of services, like water and ICT cables, Kenya is working with the authorities responsible to ensure that that is also fixed. So that work after the contract of expressway gets out of it, do their bit. Kenya has also got a contract on board under the APC arrangement to fix the water, the walking paths, all that were, affected by relocation. Some sections we lost a lane here, a lane or two. Now that also will be fixed so that we have 3 lanes through the whole stretch, as it were. It involves a bit of acquisition of land, for example, for stages, bus stops, which now have to be pushed off the road. So that's why the process delayed a bit. And also we realized that crossing from one end of the road is a challenge. And we have slotted about 7 or so footbridges that will be installed at the various locations strategically across the road. So that work has been instructed, and it will be rolled out. It's only that we didn't want the contractors to work parallel because then they overlap in the workings. Question was Dongokundu. This Dongokundu, I think, will end about 2024. Karaoke? 2023, I think. But for those who have time to cross over there, if you go through the southern bypass around the airport, Embad area, that bridge is already done. You can actually drive through almost the tail end of Mwache Bridge. Mwache Bridge will be the longest bridge in the region, about 1.4 kilometers, which they're done with the pilings. Nowadays an engineer designator. So they are done with basically the basic structure, and they're just laying the girders on top. So I think they are almost halfway done in terms of laying the girders. The work after that will be just to put the finishing works and the blacktop, and it will be done. Package 3 is already done. You can drive from Shikadabu here all the way. That is almost complete. And from the other side, you can also drive to Mwache Bridge. So basically, when the last bridge here is done, then you don't have to go to the ferry. You can cross over to town without going through the ferry. But also of importance is that there is a planned, what we call the Greater Mombasa Gateway, which will Koni ferry to avoid people who have the ferry. The design works have been complete. It will basically be for vehicles, because it will be about 70 meters above the waters at the ferry, next to where we have 200 meters off. So that project also will be able to provide vehicles crossing from the island to south as we go forward. Yes. The last one was a lady here. Yes. 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 Okay, the final one now. Yes. Okay. So quick ones because we have to go and dip our waters in the ocean. Speed limits towards Western Kenya. It's sometimes the police also take advantage, to make a coin from the speed limits. So there's some signage are not properly put, but we could work with the engineer in charge of that road to ensure that the signage are, if they're not been vandalized, then they need to be reinstalled. But as you are aware is that there is a greater plan for that road, especially from Rironi to Mau Summit, which is to be dualed all the way. And therefore, we don't want to invest a lot on it, on the hope that the finalization for that is done and then the contractor hits the road to expand the dual up to Mau Summit. The Magadi Road, I think Magadi Road, Karaoke, Magadi Road dualing, is the contractor on site? I think by June next year, I think the contractor should be moving to site, but it's also planned in that manner. Now, the question you asked about was what about the exit at CBD. Now, what happened is that the initial plan of the expressway actually had the exit at CBD, what is currently is the Green Park. Now, during stakeholder engagement, people who felt that by dropping it there will be venturing into Uhuru Park took us to court, and the case prolonged. Now, the contractor felt that the investor's time is moving, and normally there are time limits and all that. They said, okay, do away with the exit on CBD. When it's sorted, we'll drop it so that the construction continues. So it went up to the end, and unfortunately, that same place where we were to drop a Green Park was put, and there's already tarmac there, but they were not sued, unfortunately. So the same place we were to land has already a road has landed there in the name of a Green Park. Now, there's clamor now for a drop at CBD, after especially the road was opened and there was a clog at Capital Center or Museum Hill. So what we have done is that we have asked the team to redesign, and which they have done, to see where we can drop. The unfortunate bit is that there could be a bit of now land acquisition to be able to drop it. The conversation which are ongoing, and once it is sealed, then it's easier to drop it. The engineer is telling me that once they are given right of way, they can give me the estimated time within which we'll be landing there. So it's in the pipeline, but it was put off by court cases which we thought could delay the project. Now, I'm still available for off the stage negotiations, and we continue conversing on this infrastructure business now that I am an engineer designated. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate Samuel again. You see, it was important to allow him to say something because you would have gone with those questions. But then don't forget, we still have a tent there where some of those questions can be responded to. So let's make it a point to visit that tent tomorrow. That brings us to the end of our day. But as we wind up the day, I just want to make two quick announcements. Tomorrow morning, we have the SGM, the Kenya Editors Guild's special general meeting that will be here at 8 a.m. We plan to have that SGM within a duration of 1 hour. Then we can start our sessions at 9. So let's try and be punctual so that we start off on time. 2, there's tea. And tea is at the beach in a restaurant called Mahogany Restaurant. So for those of us who still have space for tea and some snacks before dinner, we can go there. Then the final announcement, which is not a very good one, is there was a typo in the today's program that spoke about a cocktail. Actually, that is a by the way. There was a typo. So we are going to have one major thing tomorrow during the gala. There is no cocktail today. No, I'm serious, by the way. So it is an opportunity for those of us who don't know the nightlife and the wildlife in Diani at night. Tembeeni tafadhali mujue Diani vile inakaa usiku. Then tomorrow we will have ours here. And Emmanuel, I am serious. It is not a joke. So no, there is not cocktail tonight. We will have the gala tomorrow. We had a few technical issues that I don't want to explain here, but tomorrow we will be sorted. Asanteni sana. It has been a pleasure whipping the speakers and you guys. See you tomorrow as I hand over to George, who will be doing this job tomorrow. Thank you very much and have a lovely evening. Oh, ngoja, kuna kitu nimepatiwa nisome na nilisahau. NHIF wameniambia there is a toll-free line for those of you who are asking. There's actually a toll-free line. If you get stuck at a hospital, there is a number which is there. I can share it if you guys are not in that quick a rush. They have an app, or it is 0800 0800 720 601 0800 720 601. There's also a USSD, which is star 155 hash. Star 155 hash. And they also have an app which is available on iOS as well as Play Store, which is called My Why, like why the question. WHY. My WHY. That's the last thing.